Hi guys, Steve Hall here from Revive Stronger, and we are in for a treat today on the Macro Bodybuilding and Powerlifting podcast. We have got a very special guest, very strong guest, and recently competed in bodybuilding and got extremely lean. So he's done both the powerlifting and the bodybuilding completely, competed in both, and I'm excited to talk to Merat today. I won't try and pronounce your last name, Merat, because I'll probably absolutely ruin it.
All right.
So Merat studied nutrition and sports science at St.Marys University.
Mm-hmm.
He's a nutrition and strength coach at Tenacity Fitness and has the all-time UK cross-fed raw with wrap squat record and has won 3 British titles as well as 2 world titles, which is amazing. So it's like I feel completely weak right now and inadequate completely. And recently got crazy shredded for a natural bodybuilding show, his first ever show. And that's actually what we're going to talk about today, kind of the differences between a bodybuilding contest prep and a powerlifting kind of peaking prep, kind of prepping for a powerlifting meet. So I'll let Merat talk about himself a little bit more, introduce his background, how he got into kind of powerlifting and now bodybuilding. How did that happen, Merat?
Well, how I got into powerlifting. Basically, I used to train with a bodybuilder in David Lloyd's gym when I was about 18, and we were training legs, and I was just repping 100 kilos like it was just nothing, and I was about 63 kilos at the time. I was really skinny kid, and he just looked at me and was like, "You're pretty strong. Why don't you do powerlifting?" And my goal was to be like him. He was just this big guy, and I was like, but all powerlifters are fat. I don't really want to do that. And then I just ended up doing a competition. I went to Genesis Gym, trained there because I got told about it from a friend, and got roped into doing a comp, won it, and then I just caught the bug. And from 6 years onwards, I was just competing in competitions and just got stronger, and just one thing led to another. Recently, I got injured during a training session, doing a speed deadlift of all things, and I kind of was in a sort of state where I was like, I wanted to continue to do something that was kind of competitive and had a goal, end goal, but I couldn't obviously lift because of the injury. I had like an SI lumbar injury, so it stopped me from squatting and deadlifting. So from then on, I just thought, well, let's just do a show, just for a reason to get shredded. Just that was the only reason I did it, really. Just it was kind of an end result to get lean, and I just wanted to see what it was like to go through the process. So I got in contact with a friend of my brother's, Benjamin Tormey. He's a really good coach, and he basically prepped me through, I think, about 13 weeks to the show. So it was a 13-week prep, and yeah, I mean, it was interesting. It was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, mentally especially.
Wow.
Yeah, so the fact that I survived through it was one thing. It was quite interesting. It's definitely a lot different than competing for powerlifting, but then there is a lot of similarities as well in terms of what's involved, in terms of the mental mindset that you need. I think both are as hard as each other, just in different ways. I would never say powerlifting is easier, because I've had prep peaking cycles where it's just almost kind of ruined me. So they're both in their own sort of unique way, I'd say. But yeah, it was an interesting process.
That's awesome. I mean, we'll go over kind of the differences step by step as discussed. But I thought it was really interesting how you touched on, and actually when we were talking beforehand, how you used, obviously it was like you couldn't squat or deadlift, so you can't powerlift. So you used bodybuilding as a way to break and still be competitive, but in something else.
Yeah.
And from my point of view, being bodybuilding first and then going into powerlifting is like something else to be competitive in and get healthy in. It's kind of funny how it's for yourself, it came from the other angle, and I think I hear guys doing that. And I don't know if that's maybe some powerlifters are horrendously overweight and so they don't have the for it. And I don't know if sometimes maybe powerlifters don't ever look down to go to that kind of aesthetics type route. So I think it's great that you did it, because I think both of them are great sports. But I think it's really interesting that you actually chose to do it, because I think a lot of powerlifters just that isn't something they are interested in at all?
Yeah, I mean, like I suppose diet itself would put a lot of them off in the first place. And the cardio thing about cardio is an equal thing, and even I was a bit apprehensive about the cardio because that's just not something I do a lot of until then. And I know one powerlifter, like an Irish powerlifter, who did prep afterwards. He did a bodybuilding prep after he competed in powerlifting, and he looked really good. In fact, he won it. He looked like he competed already before. He had like so much muscle mass, like,
Wow.
and he was always in good shape. So when I kind of saw that, I was like, I could do this. Like, and I've always been fairly like in decent shape. I've never really been like too over the top in terms of body fat. Body fat's always been decent. So for me, getting condition wasn't like even the issue. Like, it was just, for me, it was more, the thing that we were more concerned about was like posing, things like that. Just looking good, presenting myself properly on stage. Because, getting to condition is probably the last thing I was worried about. Like, I've been very low body fat before, just getting to a weight class. So, for powerlifting. So for me, it was like, okay, losing body fat in theory for me is very easy. But then getting stage lean is another thing. So that was definitely different. Like, the protocol has to go. Yeah, I think that's another thing.
I guess that's the biggest difference. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I guess that's the biggest difference is what you're peaking for. One's peaking for performance, one's peaking for a look.
Yeah. I mean, I did a weight cut where I probably could have stepped on stage because I was that lean, but it just happened. It was just because I was kind of lean before already, so it just happened to be like that. Whereas this was like, actually I was probably that lean. So like it's one thing trying to get a six pack, it's another trying to actually step on stage. So like when you're trying to get your glutes in and all that crap, and like, that's completely different. So and there was a point where you had to kind of push beyond to get that lead. And that was the goal for us as well, because we knew like I wasn't gonna win on size or anything like that. I didn't really have much size to play with, and you're not going to, especially during the prep. The whole thing is you want to kind of preserve as much as you can. So we knew like the only card I could play was the conditioning card. So that was what we did for. So, and I'd like to think I was the most conditioned stage, like if not like one of them. So I knew I was gonna get, because I didn't do a novice class. I did like a classic bodybuilding class, just a regular class.
Okay.
I didn't want to do the novice class because I just thought, well, I may as well do it properly. Just wasn't something I was interested in. So and I was still way off the weight limit anyway, because I came in at 67 kilos. So I think the classic limit for my height, which is 5'7", is like 72, something like that. So 72 stage weight is quite a big difference. There was
every pound counts.
Exactly. There's room to grow from in that class. So like that one big thing that came to me is like, even for both sports actually, it didn't matter powerlifting or bodybuilding, is that I need to get bigger basically. Well, afterwards, because like even for powerlifting, I was always quite light. Like when I did that 280, it was in the 82 class, and I was 79, but I ate my way up to 79. So the week after, I literally dropped back to 77. Usually, I'm walking around 76. My body weight can like fluctuates quite a lot, so it's like it was hard for me to maintain. So I wasn't, and like I was competing against people who were like cutting from 85 kilos. So like 85, even 90, a lot of guys cut from 90 kilos to 82. So, for me, I was always going to be that lighter guy in powerlifting as well. Even when I was doing 75s, weighing at 74, but then I'd be up against people who were like competing from 80, drop to 75, and I've never done that. I was never one to do big weight cuts. So if anything, I was always a little bit over, or I was always under. So, yeah.
So I was just going to say, you actually had to eat more and gain weight to be able to do the world record squat.
well, British record, not
That you could do it at lightweight. British, sorry.
Yeah. Basically, I mean that was like I didn't even know it was a CrossFit record when I did it. It was only afterwards I realized, but like I basically ate up to it, and I wasn't even meant to do that comp. I was meant to do
That's
it
crazy.
2 weeks after that. So it was like it's funny because no one, it was a number I just threw around like that's what I want to squat. People just laughed at me because they were just like it's quite a lot, and I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna do it. But it's pretty much like the bodybuilding comp. When I said I was gonna do it, people were just like, what? So it's yeah, I tend to do things like that. I just tend to
Lose
try.
cannon.
I just tend to aim for ridiculous things and try and just do them. That's just me.
I
But
definitely think that's a good, like having big goals. At least if you fail at a big goal, is better than easily hitting a
yeah, I
small
mean
goal.
the reason I said 280 is because at least if I try to get 280, I could hit 272 in the second attempt. So and I did 272 in the second attempt, and it was really easy. So I did 280 and I got it. So it was kind of like it just was a perfect meet day. It was just like the perfect day. Went 9 for 9. It was like perfect comp. Perfect conditions, everything was great. Ironically, it's probably the best I've ever felt physically, mentally was then because and even though I was not as lean as I was like say now, I probably felt better about how I looked just because I actually
Yeah.
I looked like I lifted like because I was like pretty big, but I wasn't necessarily like fatter. I'd say I was a bit watery maybe. I had a lot more watery look to me, but it wasn't I was still fairly lean. Like
Mhm.
I for me it's just I don't really tend to fluctuate too much with body fat, and it drops off fairly easy for me. So it was kind of a more bigger look, I guess. But yeah, that was a good point. My
So
career.
I guess that kind of leads us into the first difference that we could talk about, and that's length. And actually, I mean, for me, I wasn't lean. I am generally lean, but I wasn't lean going into my contest prep. So for bodybuilding, my actual prep was over 30 weeks long.
Yeah,
And whereas yours was 13, but obviously you were like within shooting range of your body weight that you needed to be. I had to lose
yeah,
30 pounds, over 30 pounds for, oh no, 30 pounds. I lost 30 pounds for my show, and that is a lot of weight. And
yeah,
even doing it over 30 weeks kind of was, unlike powerlifting, it's not like it's like in powerlifting, it's periodized, intensity's coming up, volume's coming down, there's a clear, it's just one way. Whereas
yeah,
with bodybuilding, a lot of it's the nutritional side, and you actually take breaks if you're doing it kind of right, or if your length is quite long, there's periods of time where you're actually having like a break from dieting because your body is just wrecked. Yeah, for powerlifting, I don't know how long were your peaking cycles tending to be for
um,
powerlifting?
10 weeks usually. I'd say like the whole cycle itself would be 10 weeks, and then I'd say the final 5 weeks is when we start like pushing it in terms of percentages and intensity. Um, and then we play it by ear as well. Like so, like for that comp in particular, I kind of like just went by how my body felt. So it was kind of a wave. So it was like we'd have 1 week where it'd be heavy, 1 week would be kind of like a little bit lower intensity, and then we'd ramp up the intensity again. And I'd always I do this now still. Like I just gauge by how many weeks out I am, how I'm feeling that week, what I think I'm capable of hitting. So a lot of it was just based on how I felt, and then the whole week would dictate that. And if I felt too beat up, I'd have it like I wouldn't deload necessarily. I would just kind of maybe just cut percentages a bit. Um, so it was similar to kind of like Brandon Lilly's cube method in a way. Like
Okay.
that really I kind of used the template for that for the squatting anyway. Because I found I recovered a lot better. But I changed it up, so I'd always have like squat variations and stuff like that. Uh, and I wouldn't always normally just do like a straight squat. Like one session might be a heavy pull squat, or one session might be against bands. If it was like a speed week, I just do it against bands. So I change it up quite a lot, and I found that quite helpful in terms of recovery.
Mhm.
Deadlift, like it was kind of, I never really pulled that heavy actually. It was always like speed against bands, and then every 4 weeks I might pull like a heavy single. but then it'd always be I'd always speed because I pull sumo. So like for me, my squat goes up, my sumo generally goes up. So as long as my technique's on point and I get the mechanics right, it should correlate. And I just would do like a heavy single every now and then just to kind of test it. Because at that point it was more about building and testing because that whole prep itself wasn't really it was more of a building cycle in terms of like how I approached it. I treated it like an off season. I didn't treat it like a contest prep or powerlifting prep. Maybe with the squat I could push it because I've noticed I was getting really, really strong. So the squat I pushed it, but everything else. Benching, I actually remember it was kind of horrendous, even though I hit PB in the comp. It was like very hit and miss for me during that prep. So, but I found since then actually increasing my frequency helped. So now benching is probably one of the most things I'm confident with in terms of doing it because, well, not just because of the injury, but just because like I found like benching 3 times a week and just varying intensity actually helped me more than saying just do once a week or twice a week because it's a lift I suck at. So the more I do with it, the better I got at it and the more confident I got with it. So like now I actually like it. So I used to hate it. So like if anything, it's the one thing I worry less about programming because it's just something I've just gotten more confident at, especially now. Like now when I bench, I'm probably more confident in benching than I'm squatting. And it used to be the other way around. So it's quite an interesting thing because I was benching even through the bodybuilding prep through the beginning stages.
Yeah.
And I was still going fairly heavy. Like even at 71 kilos, like I'd be doing 70 kilos when I got to that light. I was still doing like 100 kilos for reps, and after doing pre-fatigue shit and all that crap, So like this was after doing loads of reps and myo reps and all that, and then I'd do like a heavy bench and I'd work up to a 6 rep max and then come back down. So like, and I'd still bench a fair amount in beginning stages anyway. So that
I guess.
Yeah, I never really lost my strength in terms of benching too much.
I guess that brings up another kind of difference in, I guess, length actually. If someone considers powerlifting like an actual peaking cycle, maybe it's like you said, 10 weeks and you have like a strength block and go into a peaking block or something along those lines. There's all the time building up to it as well. So you have like phases going through hypertrophy, building muscle mass, to then kind of build work capacity and things like that. And then you kind of the actual period of peaking that strength is probably a relatively short period of time, because if you go for too long with those high intensities, you're going to lose muscle size. You're probably actually going to eventually lose some strength if you just keep trying to pile on just one rep maxes potentially. Whereas bodybuilding, sorry.
All right, no, that actually happened in the last comp. I peaked too early. What happened was I went too hard on the peaking cycle a little bit too early, and then leading to the comp, I just didn't hit anywhere near what I was doing in the gym. I still won, but like it was kind of I still felt like shit after, like just because I didn't do what I wanted to do. But yeah, you're right completely. Like what I think I will do, especially like I'd probably keep the peaking cycle very short, and then a little bit closer, just because, as you said, you will lose strength if you go too long with it, and you're just going to burn out, and you will lose muscle. Because I did find like I was actually a lot stronger and bigger before I got into that phase, and it was just a little bit too long and drawn out. So you're completely right with that. I agree. Bodybuilding obviously is a little bit different. You kind of cruise into it, but yeah.
I guess, yeah, the training wise for bodybuilding is you don't go into those like 3 rep max. You're not really training for peaking strength specifically. You're all about muscle retention and burning rates. Trying to retain muscle, you probably want to be lifting in that hypertrophy rep range anyway. And that's going to be burning more calories than kind of doing a 1 rep max or something, which I wouldn't probably advise during a peak, like a training cycle for a bodybuilder. And then a massive difference also is the amount of cardio, like you were saying before. Powerlifters probably get put off because a lot of powerlifters probably don't do much cardio, and they don't really need to. They need to recover for their sport, but specifically for powerlifting, cardio doesn't really make a huge amount of sense. If they're fit enough for powerlifting. But for bodybuilding, it's not about whether you're fit enough for bodybuilding, it's about burning calories.
Exactly.
I don't know how high your cardio got during your prep, but I know towards the last few weeks of mine, I was doing 2 high intensity interval set training sessions and 2,000 calories of low intensity steady state, which was like almost as much time as I was spending lifting weights, which almost kind of, it felt horrible. And obviously it builds up to a point of peaking, and which is nothing like in powerlifting, where you probably, if anything, you're just doing active recovery type cardio. So yeah, what did your cardio look like during your prep? I think you said it got pretty high towards the end.
It got pretty high. Well, basically what happened was like the last like 6 weeks, I was doing half an hour after every session, and then like almost as long as my basically weight training session, because a lot of my sessions were very fast paced, so it's like 45 minutes. And I was training like 6 days a week anyway. So, yeah, so I was doing half an hour, and then I'd do like a 2-hour one fasted on a Saturday. But the last few weeks, we changed it. Instead of 2 hours, a 15-minute high intensity one, and then I did a 45-minute low intensity right after fasted. And then the other the other sessions were 45 minutes post workout. So that got raised.
Right.
I was doing basically 5 45 minutes post workout cardio sessions and 1 high intensity and 45 minutes afterwards, fasted on the Saturday. And yeah, it worked. It sucked, but it worked. But like you know, it was kind of like, because we knew like we really wanted to push the conditioning. And yeah, from doing that I did get flat, but then it's easier to it made it easier for me to fill out, because what I was going to do anyway after all that, the peaking, in peak week you had the 3 days of those 3 days of depleting glycogen. I had to fill out, and I do like a horrendous refeed, and then after that I had a few days of low carb. So I'd spill over on purpose, and then the few days where I'm low carb, I actually kind of came in quite lean. So that was the plan. For me, it was easier to spill over and pull it out than to like come in flat and then try and feed myself up into it. The only issue with that was I really hated eating that amount of carbs in one day, because it just is a pain. Like, people would see the video that I put out and they would say, "Oh, that looks really fun." I'm like, you have no idea how bad, fucking horrible it was. Like 1,500 grams of carbs in one day, and like it wasn't even like I could eat much fat. The fats were minimal, protein were minimal. It's just and it sucked. Like, it's not enjoyable. It's not a normal refeed. It's not. And it's not meant to be. Like, that's the thing. You're doing it for a plan.
No, that's
so like, I did that, and if anything, it probably would have been. I would have rather like just had like 3 days of high carbs, but reduced the carbs. But like, this was what I was told to do, so I did it. And then the point where I was just actually looking forward to the lower carb days, because it was just yeah. So
yeah, I guess for the way I generally peak people, I think it sounds similar, but not maybe as an extreme increase in carbs. Like a front load, so you pack on carbs early, you then let them come down, and you try and kind of keep this peak. Like you said, you overspill on purpose, whereas I normally try and peak people, maybe overspill them, and then we can kind of manipulate carbs through the week, and then maybe give them a little hit before the show on the weekend to kind of keep that peak look. I know there's loads of different approaches people can take.
I think it was just because I was already so lean that I could afford to spill over a bit. And the carbs were actually not too bad afterwards. I was still hitting 100 grams of carbs afterwards, like 3 days after. So like
100 grams.
So it was still all right.
Not too bad.
Not too bad, but the idea was, because you're going from 1,500, 100 is like a lot lower. So it was enough to keep some sort of fullness, but enough to like deplete anything that was still kind of retained. And then obviously I didn't even pull out any water or anything like that. Like we tried that in a trial depletion, and I just looked horrible. I didn't look horrible. I just looked flat. Just hard to get pumped. So what I did actually was the last day, like I just continued drinking 6 liters. I didn't cut it out early or anything. I just did it as normal. Didn't cut any sodium. Kept it high all the way through. The only difference I did was on the day of the show. Obviously, I was just snacking on high carb sort of foods. I cut my water. I didn't really drink much during the day. I just drank if I was thirsty. And then show was like didn't start till about 3. Like by then I was kind of already like looking where I needed to be. If anything, I could have probably filled out a bit more. I think I probably came in a little bit too lean, but I also like it's the only card I could play at the time, so I couldn't really like rely on size or rely on shape. So in a way we set out what we wanted to do. So yeah, the 1500 gram one, in hindsight, even he said he probably was a little much. Like I did 1,000 was fine. It was still pushing it, but it was fine. But 1500, we just wanted to see, because I think when I did 1,000 before, and I still looked flat, so that's why we tried to push it more. So I think because I was that lean, take it. So yeah, the only issue was like when you're refeeding that much, it can cause issues digestively. So like post show, I was like the week after was probably the worst week ever, just because it was like fucked. So like only now it's kind of got back to normal, like where I can actually feel kind of normal in terms of like how my body's running.
I guess that's another massive difference to powerlifting, in that nutrition, just full stop, for powerlifting is almost, a lot of people who compete and do powerlifting, unless they have like they're near their weight boundary or whatever, they almost don't even consider it particularly. They just eat for performance. Whereas for bodybuilding, balancing eating for performance, but also eating to continue to lose weight. And like I think you said, you did a practice run for your peak week as well, which I always like to do as well, so you kind of know where you stand when you come to be brand new, and that could completely throw you off. Whereas for powerlifting, nutrition-wise, going into your peak week, I guess some people might look to cut water and kind of cut down for the body weight category, but for a large part of people, they just won't do anything different apart from eat for performance, and maybe even in a similar way, maybe eat up on carbohydrates to try and kind of give as much kind of performance from those that they're going to give you, but not for muscle fullness or anything like that, literally because that's going to aid them in their lifts and help them recover between lifts and things like that. But I think for myself, the actual food and nutrition I had on my powerlifting meet was fairly similar to my bodybuilding show. It wasn't as well managed and programmed. I didn't have specific macros to hit apart from my macros by the end of the day. I just kind of acted on carbohydrates, had like Lucozade, and just kind of sipped on water to thirst. And it was very similar to bodybuilding in that sense. But the bodybuilding, you're having a snack of kind of whatever it might be. I had like Reese's Pieces, and not Reese's Pieces, Reese's cereal. Reese's Pieces would be too fatty. And then like seeing what my pump was looking like. If I could get a pump, then that was good. If I couldn't, like have a bit more, maybe have some sodium on the day. And it's almost like the nutrition for bodybuilding on the actual day is like, it's like an art. You can't really know exactly how it's going to go. You can't know exactly what your body's going to need. Whereas for powerlifting, it's almost like you don't really need to think about it too much unless you've done the whole kind of getting rid of loads of water and like eating hardly any carbs. Is that the kind of similar approach to yourself?
Yeah, I mean, like on the day actually for powerlifting, I don't really eat a lot. I kind of just like sip on like just Lucozade, like you said. I'd probably have a fairly decent sized breakfast, and then during the day I just drink my liquids or have a few bits of like sweets and here and there. Like I actually don't really eat that much during the day because I the stress for the comp and your head's not really like in eating a lot of food over the day, and then I'll just probably have something when I'm done with the meat. So a lot of it was liquid calories, fast acting carbs, things like that. Even towards the end, just energy drink, shit like that. But for the bodybuilding, yeah, it's like for me, because it was, I think when you're very, very lean, you can pretty much get away with a lot of things. The only issue is how it digests. So And it's the same in powerlifting as well. It's all about how fast your body can digest it and how well you can tolerate food. So on the bodybuilding show, and even to the same degree of powerlifting comp, but mainly the bodybuilding show, I would eat foods that I knew I could like digest very well, like I was used to, I was accustomed to. So it was like stuff like donuts, or I'd have like these foods actually did have a fair bit of fat in them. So I'd have like Reese's cups. I'd have I was snacking on Rice Krispie squares. I was also snacking on rice cakes. There was little shortcake things. So things that were just easy to digest, that were
low fiber.
Yeah, very low fiber. Things that would just get me like pumped up very quick, because I was lean enough. So I just, if anything, it would have been good to have. I could have got away with something like a burger or something. But the problem is, on the day, I had like a lot of issues in terms of my stomach. So basically things were just going right through, to put it bluntly. So if I had a burger, I probably would be on the toilet all day. So like I basically had like it happened like right after that refeed. So that's why I was saying it kind of fucked me up a little bit. But so I was just eating things that I knew that wouldn't kind of like mess me up, because I was really suffering in terms of like digestion at that point. Like, and that's normal. Like when you're that lean and you get to that point of competition, your digestion is going to go to shit. So it was like just low fiber, high carbohydrate, high calories, anything that's easy to digest. That's powerlifting's the same. Like after I weighed in for the comp, like I mean for that one when I did 280, it wasn't really an issue. It was kind of like I just didn't eat breakfast, weighed in, came off, and then just ate normally. So it was like because I was on enough food anyway. So like but if I was gonna do a weight cut, which I did for the last one, I literally all I did was drop my carbs a few days before and made the weight. And then afterwards I just try and refeed up, but actually ironically ended up losing weight. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. I think I just did whatever I was doing just didn't work. So which actually was quite a good bit of data to use for the bodybuilding show, because I remember I was loading up on like Krispy Kremes and shit like that, and I ended up coming home like lighter than I did. I didn't gain any weight basically. I didn't put the weight back on. So we actually used that as a bit of data for the show, because we were like thinking, well, okay, these are high in carbs, and I actually ended up being lighter. So maybe we can kind of like implement that into the refeed for bodybuilding. So it ended up being a useful bit of data. So
yeah, it is interesting because the body acts in a really weird way. So sometimes by having carbs, it kind of pulls water out of places, or carbs actually reduce cortisol levels, and cortisol holds onto water, so it kind of flushes that all out. And often I find when I give people like diet breaks or refeeds, they end up coming lighter afterwards. And it's like, that shouldn't really happen, because you're eating more food and you're having more calories. You probably haven't actually lost like fat in that week, but the weeks prior, that fat's kind of coming off, which is nice.
It was funny because I remember waking up 4 o'clock in the morning in my hotel room thinking I was about to die because I was starving. And I was like, how the hell am I hungry? I've just eaten like a dozen Krispy Kremes, a freaking Burger King meal, and like all this shit, and like and I genuinely thought like I've never been that hungry in my life. It was quite funny. Like I still laugh at it now because it was just mad. Like I literally woke up with like serious hunger pangs, and I was like, I just eaten so much crap. And then the day of the meet, I just felt lean. I don't know why. I just felt light, and like my belt wasn't that tight, and I was like, what the fuck's going on? I was like, so like, even when I was warming up, I just didn't feel like I filled out. It actually, if anything, it felt like a pool, like you said, pool. There was water that's poured out of me. So it was interesting. Yeah. So I ended up being probably lighter than I was on the day of the meet. But yeah, the body is weird. It happens. Like I learned that a lot during this prep, especially for bodybuilding. But it just acts in really weird ways. It's one of the reasons why it's such a tough thing to go through, because you don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
Everybody's body reacts differently.
I think like the getting to like maybe 10% body fat, or depending on the person, like where they're getting under your lower, say, body fat set point. Say you're normally holding like 15%, getting down to 12 is probably fairly easy and comfortable. Like it's just a manage your calories, do a little bit more cardio, probably isn't all that hard. But then getting below that point where, I don't know if you had any kind of weight barriers that were just like, can't get through this. Like we introduce cardio, we reduce calories, and it's just like, I'm stuck at this weight for 2 weeks or something. And then it just all kind of falls off. And it's a bit like, you just have to be really patient. And I think that's why the length of bodybuilding preps need to be longer, because you don't, especially your first one, you don't really know how the body's going to react unless you are really lean like yourself, which is great to have 30 weeks. I mean, that's something I prep, is to have such a short one, because the less time you can be dieting, the more time you're building muscle, the more time you're healthy, and the less kind of, as long as you don't do it too crazy fast, the healthier you're going to be overall.
Yeah, I agree. There was a weight like I was stuck at for a while, and it was like, I was like hovering around like 68, 69, and to be fair, that's actually what I thought I was going to be at on stage. And then all of a sudden, like I was getting leaner, but the body weight wasn't going down. But close to the show, it was coming down, and then I ended up being 66.6 in the morning. And then when I actually weighed in for the show, it was like 67.7, but that was with clothes on, so I probably was realistically 67 if I was just in my underwear. So yeah, you're right. In that last week, that last couple of weeks is where I lost the majority of it, and a lot of it is just intercellular water and stuff like that. It's just water that was holding on, not necessarily body fat per se, because I was already fairly lean anyway, so it was just water that was just clinging onto me, pretty much, because there wasn't much to go get off me anyway. My glutes were in, everything was in. I don't think I could have lost any more, especially in that time frame. And the 13 weeks, like we did go quite hard for 13 weeks. So it was like, well, the last few weeks anyway, on the 13 weeks, we pushed it. So it was kind of like, I'd say I probably would have got the same effect if I did like a longer prep, but we didn't have that time frame for the competition I wanted to do. So yeah, right, a longer prep definitely would have been probably less mental, but
yeah.
But I managed to do it, so it was kind of like not really a big deal.
Yeah, I think a short prep maybe can work for people who are already pretty conditioned themselves and who can take it, because I find a lot of people, they don't give themselves enough time. Even if they give themselves like 20 weeks, but if they've got a lot of weight to lose and then they push really hard and then they just break and they binge and then they're stepping backwards. Whereas if you can plan, like give an extra 10 weeks and then you can plan in like a week break when you feel like you might break, and you actually plan to give yourself a bit more time. That's why I think the longer length is probably the way to go if you can place it. Whereas it sounded like this was maybe a little bit off the cuff, this competition for yourself.
Yeah, it was a little bit like it was. Like I agree completely. You ideally you want a longer time frame, and you probably I would have retained a lot more size. Maybe I might have even come in a bit heavier, which is not really a big deal. Like I might have been able to retain a bit more muscle mass. But yeah, it was kind of off the cuff. It wasn't like at first. It was kind of like, fuck. It was like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. So just as crazy as me. So it was fine. Like great combination. So like and it was something he knows I've been toying around with the idea for a while, because I've talked to him before about it. It wasn't like I just messaged him one day and he was like, yeah, let's do this. So, kind of like he knew like I had intentions of doing something like this before. I just never really kind of got around to it. And then like this was like kind of the perfect opportunity to do it. So
yeah.
So it kind of gave me the excuse. So like yeah, it was a definitely. But I guess the type of person I am, I can probably handle that. So like I'm very off the cuff anyway with a lot of things I do, and I just kind of go full steam ahead. So like when I decide to do something, I kind of just zone in and do it, and that's just me. So a lot of people probably won't be able to do that, especially the first show. Wouldn't advise that as well. Not a good idea. But it did. Like I'm not gonna lie, it was hard. It was difficult. There was a lot of personal things that happened because of it. That in hindsight, I could have avoided had I maybe taken a longer approach with it. You know, I'm not gonna go into too much detail, but it's just like you don't realize how selfish it can be. I think
Yeah,
so.
100%.
You know, I kind of ruined a relationship from it, which was kind of funny. But now I laugh at it now, but at the time it was obviously not funny. But it was that's the thing people need to realize is like when you're going through a prep, you need to think about the people you're with as well. So like yeah, it's not just tough on you; it's tough on the people close to you, closest to you.
100%. I
Uh,
think that's an amazing point you've touched on. Sorry, I just the selfishness aspect, because I think both powerlifting and bodybuilding, when you're doing it, it does become a little bit selfish. With powerlifting, it's more though just the time in the gym, and you just spend a little bit more time in the gym. Whereas outside of the gym, it's not really like ruling your life. Whereas for a bodybuilding show, it completely is your life. Especially in the last like 10 weeks, it is basically you. You are living that diet, you're living the training, you have to do the cardio, and you do become really selfish. And I know I was in a fairly new relationship at the time with the girl I'm still with now, and the fact that she stayed through that with me and supported me
yeah,
is like so powerful, because it was tough on that. And I didn't appreciate it at the time. I was like, why is she being off with me? Like, I didn't appreciate the people around me enough. And I think for a first show, it's really difficult to, unless you've got someone looking over you, like another coach who can like guide you through that maybe. But still, even then, you're not in that mental mindset. You're all about kind of your food, your training, your cardio. Has the scale gone down? I care more about the scale than my girlfriend.
yeah, you're completely right, and I feel like an arsehole saying this because it's like it's only after the show I realized all this. Like during the whole prep, it didn't phase me one point, and it's like it was after the show I was like, yeah, I was a bit of an asshole. Like even my family, like I mean, my parents, they're cool. They kind of understood. My
Mhm,
brother understood, even though like cause he's a coach himself. He coaches people in Dubai, so he's
mhm.
kind of understood what I was going through. My coach of all people definitely understood. But it's just
Yeah.
because the person I was with at the time. I mean, she knew about all the powerlifting stuff. She was with me for my last meet, but I think she didn't realize. I didn't even realize myself like how intense this was going to be.
Mhm,
So I guess in hindsight, I would have. I mean, there isn't much you can change. I think it's just these things happen. But like
mhm.
something to take note of if you decide to do it again. And like that's another thing. Like I'm at a point where like I kind of want to do both sports. I don't want to like
Yeah.
fixate on just the one and like say oh, I'm sticking with bodybuilding. I'm sticking with powerlifting. I want to be in a point where I can do both. So like that's why I kind of want to take the year off competing so I can get stronger, get back to where I was in terms of strength, but also put on a lot of
Mhm.
fat. And I've got an opportunity to do that now. So and that's pretty much the goal like now for me is to basically just take a whole year, get strong, get bigger, and then maybe be in a position where if I wanted to prep for a show, I could do. If I wanted to prep for a meet, I could do that. Nutritionally, I think a lot of powerlifters are a little bit more clued up now, especially when you see a lot of the
Yeah.
guys like Dan Green, they're in good shape, Stan Efferding. A lot of the big names are in good shape now. So like diet, people take their diet a bit more seriously. I still follow like a flexible dieting approach. I have macros to hit. You know, what
Mhm.
I'm looser obviously now with them. Like I'm not gonna track certain things like I used to. Like I won't track all my veg. I'm not gonna track this that bit of ketchup. But I will track obviously things that are fairly caloric. So like I'll still
Yeah.
like stuff like mayonnaise and shit like that. So and I'm on a lot of food at the moment. Like definitely compared to what I was eating. In the prep, I was eating almost very minimal, which is why I could have such a big refeed because what people didn't see was what I was eating day to day. Day to day was not a lot of food.
Mhm.
People they got they got a bit misconstrued with how much food I was on because the only time I'd ever post food pics up would be like if I'm having a refeed because who the fuck wants to see chicken and broccoli?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like I put up like I put up like a vlog for refeeds because it was more interesting to watch. So people were thinking I was eating all these carbs every day. I was like, nah, my carbs are were quite low. My fats were really low. My protein was fairly high. But now it's like, but what one thing I've learned from that and I carry over to this is dropping my fats a bit more because I was very fat orientated when I was
Mhm.
doing my last kind of surplus bulking whatever for powerlifting. And I realized actually kind of didn't help in terms of health, in terms of digestion. It was a bit too much, it was a bit too high. So it's up, but I've dropped it, and I've probably pushed the carbs up a little bit more, and I've actually found I'm a lot better for it. So yeah, so I've learned. There's a few things I carried over from that. So what I've basically been doing is kind of like I'm still eating kind of how I used to for that 280 prep now, but the only difference is my food choices are a little bit cleaner. But in terms of like, I have a bit more veg intake. I'm a bit more conscious about micronutrients. Fats are a little bit lower, carbs are a little bit higher. So things aren't as like, I can't really get away with as much crap. So not that I had an issue with it before, because my metabolism could handle it, but things are a lot tighter with macros. So as a result, my physique isn't really taking much of a brunt from it, but I'm getting stronger and I'm getting bigger, so I'm putting size on, and it's kind of blending the two. So I've learned a lot from like trying to mold both worlds together. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely think the nutrition side for powerlifting to bodybuilding in the off season isn't all that different.
It's very similar. I mean,
I think my sleep is coming through.
Yeah, Mark Bell touched upon it actually in the video. He was like saying how, if you want to focus on aesthetics, you either go for a carb orientated play, or you drop your carbs and go for more fats, and powerlifting both. But this is a very simple description. For me, yeah, I think it's just tracking the macros. That's all for a powerlifter. I think just knowing what you're putting in day out. Like now, I don't have refeeds, so I'll have maybe a day where I don't track as much, and then I'll just be socially normal. But like, if I'm training, I'll have a higher carb intake. If it's a non-training day, it's a lower carb intake. So that's how I generally do things now. And it worked before, and it actually works in a way where my physique doesn't get too affected from it in terms of like being out of shape. Like, I actually can build lean muscle from it and actually be in decent shape still. But at the same time, I can still
sorry.
Yeah. I still have that flexible dieting approach. So like, which I do anyway, and I can fit things in on a daily basis as opposed to having just one day where I'm just eating everything. So yeah.
Definitely. I think having some form of control, if you have more control kind of during the week, then you can be a bit looser on the weekend. If like 80% of the time you're pretty controlled with your nutrition, then you can have that flexibility. You just can't have that every day, because like you said, it just gets a bit out of control. Yeah. I think we touched on some really good differences in terms of bodybuilding to powerlifting and more. Obviously, length, powerlifting generally, the peaking part is going to be a lot shorter than for bodybuilding, and almost the longer you can take for bodybuilding seems to be better. You don't want to take crazy long, but it's going to be longer. Nutrition wise is completely different, unless the powerlifter is looking to cut weight for the meet. Otherwise, they have a pretty steady intake, whereas for bodybuilding, it could be any sort of kind of carbs dropping, calories dropping, refeeds, diet breaks. Peak week completely different. And then obviously kind of the training is completely different in that for powerlifting, it's all about peaking strength. Whereas for bodybuilding, you're peaking how your body looks and you're just trying to retain muscle mass and burn calories. Whereas for powerlifting, it's all about, okay, you build that muscle mass, then you make that muscle mass strong, and then you peak that for strength, which is more fun. And actually, I just wanted to get like a final point from you in that. What would you think, Merat, were the hardest kind of with powerlifting? Do you find it the training the hardest part, or do you mentally find it hard? I know for myself, the actual training was pretty damn hard. Like overreaching to that degree is really, really hard, but it was more mentally tough. Like if you had the mental, if I pushed myself physically, I might have felt like I couldn't, but I could do it really if I just thought about it. And then for bodybuilding, it was completely in the mind. You almost forget about food and you concentrate more on how shredded you're looking. You look at food porn all the time, but it comes down to mental toughness for me.
Yeah, I think with powerlifting, it was both mental, but in different aspects. With powerlifting, it was kind of like you said, not knowing if you could do it. I think it was just like when you have that weight in front of you, I remember one of the toughest sessions I ever had for that 280 squat was I did a 250 triple. The day before, I was so tight in my hips, I wasn't sure I could even squat one rep of that. So I literally was doing mob work like a crazy man, and then next day my hips were so loose I actually squatted quite low. And that was such a mental barrier to break for me. Knowing I could triple what used to be my 1 rep max in the gym easily, and then after that session, I was like, I've got that 280 in the bag. I didn't have any doubt. So it was very mental. You know, you're gonna feel a lot more. For me, it was more like waking up and feeling like a 50-year-old, like you know, as opposed to like, wake up, you feel like you feel battered. If something's hurting, something's gonna be hurting in your body. Even if you're not injured per se, something's gonna hurt. You know, you're gonna do something to your body, and that's what I found tough about it. For bodybuilding, definitely 100% mental. The diet, in theory, is very easy. You get into a deficit, you be consistent, you do cardio, you do your training. On paper, it's so simple. When you actually look at what constitutes as a prep, it's very, very easy in terms of what you're looking at. But when you go through it, it's completely different. So it's 100% mental, I think. But not knowing what I know now, next time round, if I did it, it would be easier because I know what to expect. I know
exactly. Yeah.
I could have a longer period of time to do it. I probably would do because, you know, the amount of, you know, I have a whole year now to put some size on. I probably am going to have a longer prep just because I probably won't be maybe as lean as I was in the starting point, but I'll have a lot more muscle mass to play with. So, yeah, it's definitely 100% mental. I think that was the only, like, and for me, it wasn't even hunger. It was stuff like energy levels. My appetite was shit.
Yeah, 100%.
I was never even hungry. Like, you know, I never used to get like, I do the food porn thing because you just kind of, like, I would crave stuff, but I wouldn't be like, oh my God, I'm so hungry. I want to eat this, I want to eat that. I'd be like, this is fucking disgusting. This is boring. When your macros get that poverty level, you know, that was when it was tough. It was just because you just get dissatisfied. I went from eating donuts for breakfast for powerlifting to fucking eating cauliflower rice. So like, you know, that was the big difference. I couldn't go out and eat with my friends or girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, that was the things that pushed me. I couldn't go out. If I went out with my parents, I'd have to be like really careful in terms of what I'm eating. You know, it's like that was the sort of things that got to me. But like, you know, I stuck through it because I knew I knew I had to do that. So you kind of get into that little zone where you just think that you just kind of single-mindedly just focusing on that, and you kind of forget like you forget how fucked up it is because it is a very fucked up way of thinking. So you just kind of get on with it or you don't. And for me, it was like, okay, I want to get to this end result, so just go with it. So I think it was definitely 100% mental. I think if you're not a mentally tough person, don't do it. It's a good way to test yourself actually mentally, for sure.
Oh yeah.
I think it builds a lot of character. You learn a lot about yourself as a person.
Yeah.
I know I did for sure. You know, during that period of time, and like I don't regret doing it one bit. Even with the down days and things I've, you know, not so much regret, but you know, could have avoided. I don't regret the whole process because I came out of it with a lot more knowledge, and I like to think I came out of it as a better person in terms of knowing myself a bit more. So like, you know, knowing, and also it kind of showed me what I wanted to do. After that prep, I kind of realized I need to like take a break from competing in general in just anything. So like it just grow. Like I've been pushing my body really hard, and that's just how I am. I just like to push myself, and it was a bit of nice. It was a good journey, and I think it was definitely well worth it. I think especially now I've done both. It's very interesting to see how they compare.
I think you touched on a great point as well with powerlifting, the fact that because the training's so tough and everything, and so many powerlifters get injured like you did yourself, like you do put your body through so much kind of mechanical tension, and it just beats it up, and you feel like an old broken person when you wake up out of bed. Whereas for bodybuilding, it's actually very similar, apart from you don't feel broken and kind of beaten. You just feel absolutely exhausted. Like energy levels drained to the absolute like nth degree, and like just getting out of bed is horrible. And I think Eric Helms from 3D Muscle Journey calls it, or he had in a seminar I went to, zombie mode. And you just enter zombie mode. You're just like, right, macros, where are they? Training, cardio, I'm going to do all this. You have to enter it.
Perfect name for it. I felt like a zombie. And I was doing like 40-hour shifts while I was doing that. So it was kind of like,
wow.
It was a bit mental. It was just, I was just like, how the fuck did I even function? Like, so yeah, you do turn into a zombie, that's for sure. You cognitively, you're just not there. I actually noticed towards the end of the prep, and I mean, I deleted the vlogs because they were just so badly edited. I just kind of like watched them and I was a bit cringe from it. But even the last vlog I did, I could tell my speech was so slurred because I still hadn't gone out of that state.
Yeah.
And when I was watching, I was like, fucking hell. I was like, I definitely like looked like I was in that sort of state, like in the way I was speaking, the way I was interacting with people. Yeah, you don't realize it till afterwards when you're actually back to normal. So, but it's something that you kind of have to go through, and this is what people need to realize. Like when you do a show and you're serious about it and you want to get into that condition, this is the shit you deal with. This is what you put up with. You kind of have, in both sports, you have to suffer to a degree to deal with it. I mean, like, even now for me, like, I still kind of will have to suffer in some sort of form way, even in the off season, but it's just not going to be maybe to the same degree for me. But I'm at a point now where like things are easier because I've gone through both sides of it.
Yeah.
Mentally, I'm tough now. Physically, I know I can handle a lot of stress. So, and the weird thing is that my appetite and digestion is probably the best it's been in a while. And it was never this good maybe in my last comp for powerlifting. And I found it very hard to like eat into a surplus. Now it's like I'm eating more calories than I was before, but I'm not actually like my physique's still decent. I'm putting on size gradually. But in a weird way, is actually doing this prep kind of set my body into a kind of nice little starting point to grow. And my injuries are pretty much gone.
Yeah.
Like I can actually squat again, which is nice. Like I did going back to squatting after a few months and doing a 160 triple in just sleeves at 72 kilos is not too bad. It was a lot I thought I'd do. And like I actually genuinely thought I wouldn't be able to do 100. So when I was ramping up to 160, I was like, shit, I could do probably more than this, and I just left it because I was just like, I don't want to push my luck. So for me, it's just getting back into that mechanical state in terms of like technique and leverage. You know, once I get a bit more size on me, my leverages will sort itself out. So actually, the injuries aren't really so bad now. I think I just need to be a bit smarter with how I program things. You know, I could probably, I think I can safely say if I wanted to, I could get back to where I was, if not surpass it. I just need to give myself time, really. I've got a whole year to play around. So that's the aim. Really, the aim for me now is to hopefully get to a point where I can squat 300, maybe. And then, but at the same time, be in a sort of good enough shape to maybe do a show if I also wanted to. So, and I feel I can do that. I think both hand in hand. You know, I want to be strong, but I also want to look good. So it's kind of like, you know, and that's just down to how you program your training and how you program your nutrition. So, you know, adding a lot more hypertrophy work to my powerlifting sessions. So I'm doing like a compound movement, which is heavy or whatever, and then doing like that in a sort of powerlifting program sense. But the assistance is all going to be hypertrophy aimed. And then with that, I think the more size I gain, strength goes up. So it's all correlated. And the diet is the diet. So the diet is pretty much being a surplus, be consistent, don't be an arsehole with your macros. You know, pretty much kind of sorted. It's off season is very simple, but you know, I've never had the opportunity to do a full year off season, so it'll be interesting.
I definitely feel like doing a bodybuilding show, you really see what your physique has to offer in muscle wise, and you strip it back, you can see what you need to work on in terms of muscle imbalances. Especially if you probably have been doing a lot of powerlifting, you probably find things like your quads are massive, your hamstrings are a bit lacking, your back might be a bit lacking, your chest is really big. And so you can work on bringing up those other areas now, and you're set up in a good position because you're lean, and the leaner you are, the more room you have to play with to build up, because inevitably muscle and fat is going to be gained. But the leaner you are, the more time you have. And what better time to do it than after a bodybuilding show when you're lean and still being able to probably build up some leg size as well. If you're not been able to squat as much, maybe your leg volume slightly down. I think you're going to be in a great place to compete in powerlifting, and then hopefully after that, you'll do a bodybuilding show as well.
Yeah, that's the plan. I mean, it's funny you say that. It's right, the leg development side of things. Like, the only issue I was lagging was like the quad sweep. I didn't have much of a quad sweep. My back was pretty good. I've always had a decent back, so that was all right. Hamstrings and glutes were all right. Could be better, but like glutes were definitely, with the glutes, it was more like I actually needed to build them to have better glutes on stage.
Mm-hmm.
They were lean enough. They just needed to be so, and that was just due to not being on the squat. Deadlift for a while, but my back was fine. Shoulders were fine. Chest was ironically fine, even though bench is like the shittest thing for me. But yeah, it's funny. A lot of powerlifters that get the quads are very lacking. Yeah, it was more of the outer sweep, but definitely like so it's just shit like hack squatting and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Those sort of movements, closer stance leg press, just stuff that I don't usually do. That I'm doing now. Like after my squat today, I was just doing a lot of quad oriented movements, just focusing on that, and like hack squatting. I hate it, but it works. I definitely feel it in the outer. So it's just doing.
Where you can get so much volume.
Exactly. So yeah, you're completely right with that. And that's the aim, to be able to work and enjoy it. Really, that's the main aim.
Cool. So I think we just go to kind of where can people find more about you, kind of Tenacity and your coaching, and kind of you said about your YouTube videos. Where can people find that?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna start vlogging again soon. Maybe next week after. We'll just see. I'm gonna give it like some time, and then I'll go back on it. You can just, if you search my name, Merat Tafreshi, it will come up on the YouTube. A lot of my old lifting videos on there too. If you email me, merat.tafreshi@gmail.com, that's probably the best way to get at me before, because I do a bit of online coaching, programming, strength coaching, things like that. I also have a Facebook page, Tenacity Fitness. So I think it's facebook.com/Tenacity Fitness Coaching. So that's where you can find my page. At Instagram, Tenacity MT, and my Twitter, Merat Tafreshi. So yeah.
Awesome. I'll put all of the links in the description below, so if people are not completely sure where to find that, it's going to be below. And I just want to leave kind of with this one question to you, Merat, because I think it's an interesting question to ask anyone who's gone through a bodybuilding prep. And that is, what was your kind of favorite food during contest prep, like the macro-friendly thing that you just ate all the time? Although you said your appetite wasn't huge, was there anything you just had like every single day of prep?
It's actually really weird. It was you ever heard of courgette?
Courgette, I know courgettes, but
basically it was courgette. It's basically courgettes made into like spaghetti, and it was you can pick it up in Sainsbury's, already packed. I would have that. I'd have a carton of egg whites, and I'd scramble that with like this vegan cheese, which is basically just nothing. It just tastes like cheese. Nothing in it. It's nutritionally void, and it would just taste like cheesy eggs in like spaghetti. And I'd just put a lot of sriracha on that, and like fat-free mayo, and that was my jam for like every day. Go-to meal, and looking back at it, that sounds kind of gross, but at the time it was like heaven.
Yeah.
And of course, Pepsi Max Cherry.
Oh yes, 100%.
Pepsi Max Cherry, that saved me a few times. Yeah, I actually water loaded on that as well, which was kind of funny. So like, yeah, that and Diet Cream soda, little things like that, crazy shit. That's what.
Your taste buds almost change after contest prep. You just everything tastes a million times better, and that stuff tastes like crap now.
Cauliflower rice the other day, and I was like, this is gross. How the fuck did I eat this every day? I was like, yeah, it does change for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Merit. I think we'll call it a day there. And thank you everyone else for tuning in. And we'll catch you soon. Cheers, Merit.
No problem, man. Take care.